economics correspondent at the Australian Financial Review, Matt Cranston. Matt, thank you for your time.
Pleasure, Annalise.
Now, big news this week. We're all excited about the Westpac AGM tomorrow. What do you reckon? Is there going to be a spill of the board?
You've got a good question there. I think, so many weeks of preparation be going into the vote on this. It's actually a good question. It probably will. I don't know. It's a hard.
I put you on the spot there, didn't I?
You did. I mean, what's going on is that it'd be interesting to see where some of these big super funds land on it. The ACSI, the Australian Council of Superannuation Investors, have sort of said no, they won't vote against some of the reappointments on the board, Paul Marriott, those sort of guys. But I think where you're going to see a fair bit of fire and fireworks is the remuneration report. I think there'll be a few people that'll vote against that. But as I said, like in the weeks leading up to this thing, so much preparation is done in organising the vote already. And it'll be a close run thing.
And that's the thing, is leading up to it, everyone wants to make their displeasure known and to be negotiated with. And so there is a lot of consternation leading up to it. But the question is, will people cut their own nose to spite their face? Yeah,
it's actually, I think it'll be another sort of interesting view on the power play from the industry funds. Like, I mean, you've seen the Transport Workers Union, Michael Caine, who's on the board of ACSI, sort of disagree with ACSI on how he would like to see things voted on both, definitely remuneration, but also on the reappointment of Paul Marriott, who was the head of the audit committee. But it'll just be this could lead right up to tomorrow on how they're going to vote, and I think it's going to be it'll be worth going down and
I'm excited heading down to Sydney for it. But the other exciting thing in Canberra at the moment is MYEFO.
Yeah.
Bit of a bubble story, but we do enjoy the MYEFO update because it tells us exactly where the budget's sitting.
That's right. It is not. I think maybe this time around it's not so much of a bubble story because a lot of the market economists they're having difficulty working out where it's actually going to land. So in the last financial statements for October, it showed that the budget was slightly ahead of where the forecast would be from the April budget expectations. However, the May budget, it was including forecasts on a whole lot of economic parameters, such as where wages were going to go, and they were a lot more bullish back then than where I think they're going to end up next week. So they might revise downwards some of those key parts. So that ends up getting you to a point where maybe the budget actually, that surplus expected of $7 billion next year might actually be a lot less.
And that's something the government could not afford to step down on. That has been so key to their re-election, is managing the economy and promising. They've been saying we're already in surplus, which isn't quite right.
Yeah, it's in balance, yeah. But so on this, I think that you're going to have a situation where it's going to be really touch and go about what fiscal stimulus they do, or sort of the second stage tax cuts. I think Westpac's Bill Evans has done a few little sums and figures on this, and it's going to be sort of roughly $14 billion for the two lots of second stage tax cuts, and that will come in very close to removing the surplus. So it's going to be interesting to watch just how close that gets. But you're right, the political imperative to keeping the surplus is pretty important. I think that there's a sensitivity analysis on this as well, which shows that if you reduce some of those key markers, such as wage growth by 25 basis points, you lose about $740 million every time you adjust that downwards. And so that's going to play into this in a big way. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that if they have 1 or 2% growth, that doesn't matter so much to the political story as having a surplus.
Absolutely.
You can definitely go to the next election saying, the economy 1 or 2% still growing. But if you can't go to the next election saying you're in surplus, that's a bigger hit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that is really a punter story is interest rates. And we've had a lot of commentary from RBA Governor recently, but there's still this question about whether we could be engaging in quantitative easing next year.
Yeah. Once again, you put me on the spot about whether or not I should answer if there's going to be QE or not. Certainly, I've printed out, which is probably bad for the environment, but I've printed out the amount of QE reports from economists, and it's almost a good 2 inches thick. And I've read them all, and it's very detailed on how they think it's going to happen, but it's just whether or not it will or not. And I think a lot of this will depend on what's going to happen. And it's quite a specific thing to draw it all back to, but I think what it'll depend on is consumption. And we saw a very weak reading of consumption in September quarter. Yesterday, the RBA Governor, Philip Lowe, has come out and said, look, just be patient with it, because interest rate reductions take 3 to 6 to 9 months to work their way through the system. Some people say it's different this time because your interest rate's so low, and the savings that you have on your mortgages won't be enough to really incentivise you to spend more.
And the thing is, like, if you are like a pensioner who has savings, you're not going to be out there spending as much at Christmas as you would if interest rates are that low.
True, yeah. I suppose also that, if you're a pensioner, definitely not. But I mean, if you're a self-funded retiree, you've benefited from huge asset appreciation in the last decade or so. And so maybe you owe it to your country to buy a pair of shoes for yourself, for your husband, and for your and for the nation.
Yeah. Have you been playing your part? Spending this Christmas?
There's an extended Christmas list from my family which I'll participate in.
Excellent. I'm sure Josh Frydenberg will be glad to hear it.
Yes.
Matt Cranston, as always, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Annalise.